Well, good evening, everybody. It's good to have you with us tonight. We are on our second edition of Thursday Night Live, and it's going to be a good evening as we spend some time with Clint and Sandy Honecker. I am going to see if I can remove that banner that's going along the bottom. Clint and Sandy, you may not recognize that name. Clint and Sandy were with us this past Thanksgiving. They are the parents of Christina, who is our one of our staff members, and also Clint is the brother of Norm, who is the gentleman who takes care of both our facilities. And so I've just got to know them a little bit as they come out and visit Christina. But this past Sunday, they shared a pretty remarkable story. So I just want to welcome the Honeckers from Edmonton. You're here from Edmonton. How are things in Edmonton today?
Flurries every once in a
How
while.
are things in Edmonton for you? Okay, flurries. Wow. Clint, you were outside working away in the little bit of the snow, were you?
A little bit, not much. Mostly inside.
Okay. Well, I know when I talked to Sandy today, she was out cutting the lawn in the snow.
Well, it was very, very light.
Okay. Not a lot. Fair enough. This past Sunday, Clint and Sandy, you let us into your world a little bit and shared the story of losing your son. Tragic accident. Clint, as you shared a little bit of that story, you made a profound statement right off the bat. And the people in my room, as we were watching your interview, all were just sort of shaken by the statement and challenged with it. And you made the comment, I'm just going to read it here. You immediately chose not to go down the blame road. Your son, Michael, had been with your in-laws, is that right? Matthew, I'm sorry. Matthew, I apologize. Matthew is with your in-laws?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then you heard the news that he had passed away. You were at the hospital and you said, I do not want to go down the blame road. Where did that amazing statement and thought come from? How were you processing this?
Well, first of all, I believe, like as I look back, that it was from God Himself. That thought, because I can't understand why I would be thinking that way clearly like that at that time. But I also saw my wife there and believed that, well, I just knew that if I go down this road, it would not only damage my relationship with her family, but she was going through the same thing, and I love her too much to do that kind of blame game when she needed my support at that time. So I believe that had a lot to do with it as well.
How old were you two at this point when you lost your son?
I was 39 and Clint was 30.
Yeah. And so you had a faith in God that obviously played a role.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah.
Well, what do you say? We were not always perfect with our walk with God, but we believed that He planned things in our lives and we had to accept it. And that's what I was taught as a child. And then as I got older, I accepted that. But I never had to really hold on to it until we lost Matthew. then you figure out how much you truly believe it. But you know what? God was there. God did things miraculously in our lives then, that it was something that God just gave us as a gift. Clint, when it came to the blame game, because that was just so foreign to me, to blame my family. My mother was the most cautious person. And then me to have compassion for the mother of the girl that was driving. I saw her as being just like me because she was my age, and I could have had a person that was 19 years old, and it could have been me saying to someone else, I am so sorry that my daughter hit your son. So God just gave that to us, and we didn't question it. It was just a gift he gave us. That's all we can say.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess as I'm sitting here, hearing the story, I mean, you had a choice to make, I suppose. Hey, like, that was a gift that was offered to you, and you responded in that way. So Clint is making this statement to you in the room about not wanting to blame. How did that sort of hit you? I think you just said you didn't even really think of going there, but what did that sort of do for you as you looked at Clint in this time of sorrow?
Me?
Yeah, sorry, Sandy. Yes, you.
Well, we were with my family. Some of them were with Matthew when he passed away. Some of them weren't. And we were all reacting, all supporting each other. And we went through it. And if that element of Clint blaming people would have been part of it, our time supporting each other would have looked completely different. The way my mom and my dad and my brother grieved would have been completely different. Because you got to realize they took the brunt of it. Mm-hmm. They were there physically. Clint and I never had to go through that. And I watched my brother after he had to speak to the insurance company, and he looked like an old man, and he was younger than me. Mm-hmm. And I realized how much of a toll that took on them. God spared us.
Yeah. You were realizing that in that moment at that time, or is this in?
Oh, no. That when my brother came walking away from talking to the insurance person, he looked like he had aged because of the burden he was carrying. Yeah. So we just fed off each other and just supported each other. And of course they felt terrible for us. But Clint making that decision not to blame changed the whole chemistry of the support system we had. And when our friends came down from Edmonton to be in the funeral, they never came up to us and tried to start blaming my family. It was just not in the equation.
Yeah, so it was
support. Yeah,
it was support of our friends too, and who really helped us to see things clearly as well.
I've been stepping in and out of people's lives in the midst of challenging circumstances for most of my career. It's part of my job as a pastor. And I guess what I can say is how you chose to initially walk into and through this horrific situation. I mean, it just set a tone. And that's what I hear you saying. I mean, what an amazing thing. You talk about friends. Sorry.
Yeah. It's amazing for me to look back and know that very summer, it was in the summer, was it that your mom flew up?
Yeah, my mom came up that summer.
Flew up to our place, and consistently year after year, her mom and dad came up to visit us. And that decision I made that all possible, because otherwise that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Because it just wouldn't have.
Yeah. But we had friends who had gone through hard times. One of our relatives went full term with a baby, and the baby died in womb like 2 or 3 days before it was supposed to be born. And they didn't blame God. And we walked through that with them. Another friend had almost the same situation, and we walked through that with them, and they didn't blame God. And when she had a live birth a year or so later, at the dedication, her song she wanted us to sing was, "You have turned my mourning into dancing, Lord." And that said it all. We had gone through mourning with her. She recognized she had gone through mourning, but God had given her a beautiful baby girl. And so that was not the first time we had seen it. People do it as an example to us. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. You mentioned family. So your family's not in the Edmonton area. You have family down in the States, and this is where the accident happened. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, they lived all over the world, but at that point, my mom and dad lived in Georgia, so we all came together for that week or two, and it was around Easter time.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So many things I want to ask you. You talk about community and relationships, even in the fact that prior to what you went through with your family, you'd seen others. But Sandy, I remember on Sunday when you were talking, you mentioned that, I mean, you just were in a fog, which completely makes sense. And you had some friends around you. Can you maybe just talk a little bit about that? What did they do? What does that mean they were around you? What were your conversations like, or things you avoided or not avoided?
Well, because we were free to talk about Matthew, I think that set the tone for others to be free. And I think at first it might seem kind of uncomfortable, but they learned the new normal of us talking about our son, even though he passed away. But friend who had come to coffee once a week with me, with her son, continued. And she didn't really know what to say, but she came. One of my friends, as I mentioned, Sunday, she called me every day on the way home from work. Another friend who my kids spent all summer with, she had a friend who had a book on grieving. So the one friend I didn't know very well gave it to my friend that was very close to me so she could help me. It was, and we had been in a small group Bible study. And guys, that is crucial to being able to go through hard times later on, because people don't have to know your story. They already know your story. And then the crisis just continues with them. I can't say enough about small group Bible studies, about house churches. And I started house church when I was in university, and it was just part of my life, and it's huge.
So if you could maybe give us an idea of some of the things that were helpful that were said, and if maybe there are a couple things that were a little bit hard to take or hurtful a little bit, so help us maybe learn a little bit how to walk alongside others. Clint or Sandy, I'd love to hear from both of you on that.
I think I resented when I was told, I know what you're going through. I've been through something like that, because nobody knows exactly what I'm going through, and it's better just to come alongside and just say, I'm here for you. And not try to identify with you in my pain that I'm going through. So I think that I learned that when people are going through pain, you don't try to say, yeah, I'm feeling, I know what you're feeling. I know, because pain is pain, and everybody deals with it differently. And the pain of losing your job or divorce, or those pains, nobody can there, you can't quantify them.
Yeah.
Pain is pain, and that pain could be as much of a pain as what we felt with our losing a son. I mean, so
Yeah, I don't know if anybody said something that was hurtful to me, but I noticed at least one or two people didn't know what to do with it, so they just backed off, and you just didn't see them. So you just go, well, it's, and everybody has their own story, their own background. My one friend said when her father died, no one talked about him. He just didn't exist anymore. And I could not believe that someone would do that to someone when they lost someone important. To not talk about Matthew. I mean, my daughters go to university or college, and I continue to talk to him, and we're separated. So why not talk about your son who's in heaven?
Yeah.
We're separated from him, but he's still part of our lives. So we talk about it a lot.
So you noticed that. So you noticed some friends of yours who all of a sudden just weren't maybe quite as available to you, or weren't interesting in the midst of that fog and in the.
Now,
Wow.
because I had such a strong group, it didn't make, I mean, it wasn't huge, but I did notice that some people, they couldn't handle it.
avoided.
Yeah. As I hear what Clint said and what you just said, if we could just learn that we don't have to have the words, just presence is massive in that time. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, as I was thinking about talking with you, one of the things that struck me as I've gone through, as I said earlier, just life and journeying with people, and we see it around us. When people go through something this tragic, it can have an incredible, it can really hit a relationship hard. And some relationships, frankly, marriages, don't make it. You obviously have made it. You're doing great. You're sitting close beside each other. Can you just talk a little bit about how you were there decisions made, statements made? This is not going to be to separate us. We're just going to hold on to each other. Like, how did you just sort of go through that relationally, the two of you?
I don't ever remember talking about it.
Okay.
Well, I remember. I remember telling Sandy, telling you that Matthew's gone, but you are here, and the girls are here, and it drew us together as a family closely. And we were going to go through this together, and we were always very open to each other about it, and about how we were doing, and I always wanted to get home from work as quick as possible, because I wanted to see my Sandy and see how she was doing.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate. We talked about a fog before, and I went through that fog time too, very much so. But I think I was operating at about 50% in my work, and fortunately, I came back to these clients who I was right in the midst of a kitchen renovation for them, and the first thing they said when I came home is, I think they called me actually and said, "Listen, Clint, we recognize that you're going through a hard time. Our kitchen is not priority. You of course you'd like it done, but you do it at your time, in your time, and we give you that freedom to just do it. Oh wow, that was amazing. But it allowed me to come home and see how Sandy and the girls were doing, and just was around at that time.
We had gone through a marriage seminar, as I mentioned, in November, and I'll tell you that was huge because we had dealt with a lot of things so that we were in a healthy place in communicating.
Yeah.
Because I was a stay-at-home mom with 3 kids, and he was working long hours, and it was not fun.
Yeah.
And it was 10 weeks, an hour or so on Sunday nights, and so it really covered a lot of stuff. And it really got us in a place that we could communicate and stay healthy during this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for you. Good for you. You mentioned that.
God gave us that gift.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned your 2 daughters. How old were they when this took place?
5 and 2.
Okay. Yeah. So what I see, 20 plus years later, are 2 women, godly, just amazing people to be around. I just, and I, as a parent, I know that we do our best and they have to make choices, but I just want to applaud the 2 of you for how you allowed God to work through you to raise such amazing young ladies. What I'm wondering is now, I mean, your life, although you have a defining moment of losing your son, your life is more than that, but that's a part of it. How has maybe your faith grown, matured, morphed a little bit? What does hope look like to you today? I kind of, in my little note to you, I said, we're a little more on the mature end of the age spectrum now. And I'm just wondering, what does that look like? Maybe to some of the younger listeners, maybe newer to faith folks, what does that look like for you? How has that changed?
Well, as I know, right when the tragedy happened, we were traveling home on the plane, and I looked at Sandy, and she was thinking the same thing. We would not mind if this plane would go down right now. Our whole family's here. We don't be reunited with our Matthew. I just like that, But I mean, life does go on, and we have definitely that hope that was there in the plane, that if it went down, I mean, we'd be going, and that hope is real, and it's living. It's a living hope, because as Paul says, "Oh death, where's your sting? Oh death, where is your victory?" And of course, we know our victory is already been won, and our victory is in Christ, in Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
There's a Christmas song that goes, now I can't remember it. The thrill of hope. The weary world rejoices, 'cause yonder breaks a new and glorious morn.
Yeah.
And that is wonderful words for someone who's lost someone.
Yeah.
Wow.
I never thought about that until Focus on the Family gave me a little magnet that had that on it. And I thought, wow, that's the hope we have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
that is right. I've sung that song. I don't know what song that is. I recognize that lyric, but that, just the way you share that does, we live in a weary world.
Yeah.
So you were 20 or so years ago, your daughters are 5 and 2. you're having conversations with them as you go forward. How did you, I'm thinking there could be some young parents here trying to talk through some of the losses of life. How did you maybe share with your daughters how you viewed what had gone on and where God was in the midst of all of this? Like, how did that look?
We always, talked about Matthew. We did. Remember when he did that, or remember this and remember that. When he even letting Jennifer, who was the youngest, it didn't affect her at all. Like, it didn't seem to. She just was in her own world, and she, death didn't really mean a lot to her at that time. Probably she wondered where Matthew was, but we always, because we wanted them to know their brother, and so that was one of the ways we were able to encourage them and help them to work through this. And
we talked about Matthew being in heaven. And Christina, I think a year after Matthew died, said, when are we going to be able to go to heaven and see Matthew? That was what we said. Matthew wasn't here. He was in heaven. So, yeah.
And tell about Jennifer.
Now, we had friends who had lost a child, and their daughter was very young when they lost their other child. And she said, when my daughter got to be 12, she mourned her sister. And just something like that prepared me. And then when Jennifer, one time when she was 12, was weepy and talking about Matthew, I thought, well, there it is. Because every child, depending on their age, they see the concept of death. And sometimes we repeat. I know one of my friends, her daughter at 16, she's mourning her father again, because when she was younger, her father died, and she's now really grasping, And so friends of ours told us those things, and yeah. Was there anything else you want to say?
No.
Yeah. So Clint, we as men are not always the greatest at talking about spiritual things or things of the heart. You've got let's put an image in front of you. You've got a young man sitting across from you, and you're just trying to encourage him as a young man entering into this thing called adulthood and the experience of life, the ups and downs. How would you encourage them? What would you challenge them to think about as a man of faith, person who is considering God and what that means in life? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I learned a lot because, as Sandy said, my life I was very busy, a very busy man. And after this happened, things changed. And work, making money, supporting my family, that was not the priority. It ended up being more priority just to be here as a dad and spend quality time, more time in these. I feel that I don't have a lot of regrets with Matthew, but I do feel that I missed some key moments in his life that Sandy tells me about, but I wasn't there, witnessing it. And so I wasn't going to have that happen with my girls. So that's my encouragement to these young guys, young fathers, young men is, listen, life goes by so fast. Don't let it pass you by without spending proper time with the ones you love, and being there for them, because when they get older, you've lost the opportunities to have any input and influence, or I shouldn't say any, but the influence that we give our kids is so important when they're younger.
Sandy, flip the side to you. Anything you'd like to share with some of the women out there, young ladies, young women?
Well, we had the opportunity of having me being a full-time mom. I did sew on the side for extra income, but I was pretty much there for the girls when they came home, and that continued afterwards. I did have to fight being anxious on certain things. We are within sight of the school, and we have these dinky little binoculars. And I didn't tell the girls this, but when Christina would walk to school, I could see right as she walked into the school grounds. But I didn't want her to be hyper for crossing the street. I didn't want to give that to her. So I made a point of, she did see me one time freak out when Jennifer fainted. And I said, God, I can't lose another one. And that really has made an impact on her. She remembers that. She doesn't remember more. But kids feed off of the way we are. Mm-hmm. So we really need to be intentional the way we come off to them, and really guard what we say and process how we're reacting, because kids feed off the way their parents are acting, whether it's crisis in the home, COVID, anything. Kids are listening. Yeah. And we make a difference in the way,
they respond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Their little ears.
Yeah. So anything else that you'd like to, thank you so much for being with us on Thanksgiving Sunday. Thanks tonight for just even opening up a little more. Is there anything else that you'd just like to share in closing? Anything that I didn't sort of pull out of you with a question or two? Anything you can think of?
We had a lot of people praying for us all over the world.
Okay.
One of my friends was praying for me during the night, and Clint and I were sleeping well, but she wasn't, and realized that you're not doing it on your own. People were backing us up, and they were so gracious with us. So yeah, keep the connections. Keep your connections with your girlfriends, your Christian girlfriends that will pray for you. Yeah.
Clint, anything else from you?
Well,
doesn't have to be.
I would say I would say that if you're going through a difficult time right now, our God is faithful. He is the one that you can trust. That He is a firm foundation and will not change, and is ever, always with you, ever present.
Well, as we talked last night in preparation for this, one of the things we both agreed upon is that the whole reason to have you on was to help people see the faithfulness of our God who wants to be with them, that this wasn't to raise up Clint and Sandy as some amazing people, although I want to say you are amazing. Well done. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for walking with God. Thank you for how you raised your kids. Thank you for sharing your daughter with the West Coast. Not that it was really your decision anyways. Christina has a mind of her own, as you well know. Well, thank you so much. God bless. And for those of you who have joined in with us, I just encourage you, first and third Thursdays, we're just going to be having these conversations with people to help us understand how to have a little more hope, a little more help as we go through the ups and downs of life. God bless. Thanks, everyone, for being with us.
Thank you.